I love to use simple examples for people to get the concept and then bring it into real life. So let me just start with, I'm going to start with one that is called, and I'm going to just give you the easy one. I won't do the test and say, can you guess what this is? So
thank you.
Yes. One of the logical fallacies is called equivocation. So equivocation is when you change the meaning or the definition of a word or a phrase in the middle of a sentence. Okay, have you ever seen a sign on the billboard? Like say maybe they're trying to get people to stop smoking and the billboard will say, if you're looking for a sign to stop smoking, this is it. Okay, that's equivocation of the word sign. They're using it to mean a literal like sign on the side of the road, but also kind of as a sign or a signal to us, like, what's my sign that I should do this? They're using it in two different ways. A lot of jokes and puns come from this, and so they can be very funny. But they can also be very dangerous. Here's one of the big equivocations that has, I know for me, I have seen come into play in the last, I will say just 5 years, maybe even more so in the last 3. And it is the word racism. Okay. Racism, especially if you go back and you read Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech, his definition, and I think the traditional definition of the word racism is when you treat somebody differently based on the color of their skin. And the whole point was you shouldn't do that, right? God says that we're all created in his image. We should all be treated the same way. We shouldn't treat people differently based on the color of their skin. Well, that definition has now changed. Now, the definition of racism is if you don't treat somebody differently or uniquely or special because of the color of their skin.
Right.
So can you imagine? I mean, and we have seen this conversation play out over the last couple of years of you've got two different generations or people using two different definitions of this word, trying to have an argument or a conversation, and the meaning of the word has completely changed. And people don't even realize that it has changed. They don't even realize they're using the word with different meanings, and it's causing frustration. And there's all these policies being made around it now, and it doesn't make sense. And this is why. It's because the word itself, the meaning of it has been changed.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I never have actually even thought about the specific meaning of that word and what it was first intended to be and what it has become today. So that's interesting.
Right.
That's really
interesting. Here's another one, ad hominem. So an ad hominem attack, it's a Latin word that just means to the man, right? So basically an ad hominem attack is when you're attacking the person, their character, or maybe personal traits about that person, rather than actually disproving their argument. So we saw this a lot during the Trump administration, right? Whatever Donald Trump would say or his wife Melania would say, they would get attacked. It was so easy just to call Donald Trump the orange man or Cheeto, right? Or something like that. So it's picking up this, one characteristic about him and calling names essentially, without even looking at, well, is what he said, are the things that he's saying, are they actually true? Are they good? Well, they just discounted him. And same thing happened to Melania. Whenever she would try to say something, what did she get attacked for? Her accent, right? She is not a native,
or
English
the baseball
speaker.
cap that she wore or.
Right. And none of it. So it was all, just kind of attacking the person rather than actually looking at what they're saying and saying, is there merit to this? Is there value? Is it true?
So in the fallacy detective, I know they talk about all of these different fallacies and there's names for so many different ones. And it's fascinating. Like you said, like I never knew, I had never even understood that fallacy was really a thing. I mean, I know of course people have wrong thinking, but that you could study different fallacies. And the book is absolutely fascinating. I mean, again, Kathy, mentioned it. It's called The Fallacy Detective. And as a matter of fact, we just recently, Caleb Schrader was on the podcast and he talked about this book as well. So we'll put a link to this book in the show notes, of course, so you guys can get a hold of it. But it's a fun book to read. Yes. Because you just read this one with your kids. This is not a book that you want to hand to your kids and say, here, read on your own. This is like a good dinner time book you guys can read together, as a family. And start recognizing how to understand good fallacy and recognize what each of the different ones are. Cause yeah, it's an absolutely amazing book.
Well, and the thing that I've been amazed with as I've been researching for my podcast is how many there are. Because the book, the Fallacy Detective, is such a good introduction. And it talks about 38 fallacies. I have now come up with a list of over 150.
Really?
Because
wow.
I'm like, I want to do a little episode on each one. I'm like, there's a lot of them. It's kind of crazy how many are out there. But I'm with you. I can't highly enough recommend families to go through that book together.
Yeah. Do you talk about the red herring fallacy? Because that's something that you often, like, you'll hear people say, and I never understood what that was until this book. I'll hear people say, oh, that's a red herring. I'm like, oh, I don't even know what they're talking about. I don't know what that means.
Yes. Okay.
Because I think that's probably the most common one we hear about, right?
We see it a lot. I mean, we see it, especially if you're looking at political debates or even people on the news. But a red herring is, and I'll explain the background to it. But basically, a red herring happens when somebody asks a question or is supposed to be talking about a topic and they answer with something that is completely off topic. They don't even address the original thing. They just answer with some other, who knows? It could be crazy. It could be most likely completely irrelevant. Here's where that fallacy comes from. At one point, the dog trainers, people who are training dogs to be like hunting dogs, tracking dogs, what they would do is they would put a dog on a scent. Like, say this dog is hunting, I don't know, turkeys, right? I don't train dogs to hunt. So let's say he's training a dog to hunt turkeys. They would put the dog on a scent trail, and then they would take a rotten fish. A red herring is a fish. It's just a stinky fish. And they would take the red herring and kind of like rub it along that trail, kind of across the turkey trail, going off in another direction. And it was a test for the dogs to see if the dogs would take the new scent or if they would stay on the original scent for the turkeys. And so that's why a red herring is something that's designed to get you completely off track on something that has nothing to do with what it was that you were originally trying to do.
Homeschool Insights is sponsored by CTC Math. If you're looking for a great online math program, visit ctcmath.com and try it for free. For more great homeschool inspiration and resources, listen to the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday.